Britain's Prince Andrew is once again attempting to distance himself from his one-time friend Jeffrey Epstein. The Duke of York saying he's appalled by the recent reports of Epstein's alleged crimes. In a new statement, Buckingham Palace adding, His Royal Highness deplores the exploitation of any human being, and the suggestion he would condone, participate in, or encourage any such behavior is abhorrent. After weeks of silence on the scandal, the new statement comes on the same day the Daily Mail published new images allegedly showing Prince Andrew at Epstein's New York home, reportedly recorded around the same time the pair was photographed together in the city in 2010. NBC News has not authenticated the video, and the palace did not specifically comment on the video. Prince Andrew has previously faced accusations related to Epstein's alleged sex trafficking ring. In a 2015 defamation lawsuit, Virginia Roberts-Giuffre, pictured here with Prince Andrew, claims Epstein forced her to have sex with the royal on 3 separate occasions when she was 17.
Before you know it, I'm being lent out to politicians and to academics and to people royalty.
Prince Andrew has denied those allegations, and the lawsuit was settled out of court. Meanwhile, Jeffrey Epstein's attorneys say they're not satisfied with the medical examiner's ruling that he died from suicide by hanging at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York City. Mounting questions as the New York Times revealed new details about Epstein's final days after interviewing law enforcement, lawyers, and Bureau of Prisons staff.
He would spend almost every day with his lawyers. Usually it would be 12 hours. And then he was, outside of that, trying to put money in other inmates' commissary so that he could, we're told, so that he could try and buy protection.
NBC News has not independently confirmed those assertions, of a stark contrast to the gilded life Epstein once knew. NBC News has also learned, according to a Justice Department official, that some of the employees at the correctional facility where Epstein died have not submitted to interviews by the FBI and the Justice Department's Inspector General, and that some of them have even lawyered up.
Jeffrey Epstein leaving his New York townhouse with a young woman. An hour later, Prince Andrew appears at the door with another young woman, opening it just slightly to wave her off. It's the emergence of this footage which sparked an unusually swift response from Buckingham Palace. The pictures are from 2010, more than a decade after Epstein and Prince Andrew met, and just 2 years after Epstein pleaded guilty to 1 count of solicitation of prostitution and 1 count of solicitation of prostitution of a minor. This avoided any federal charges which could have seen him face life in prison. Instead, he controversially received an 18-month sentence. The seriousness of the charges and the high-profile nature of the case left his reputation destroyed, and many of his high-profile friends, including Donald Trump, shunned him, but not Prince Andrew. Epstein was put on the sex offenders register in Florida and New York after his conviction. However, Prince Andrew persisted in his friendship with him. And there's also the now famous picture of the prince with his arm around Virginia Roberts in 2001, who claimed in US court documents that Prince Andrew had sex with her at the age of 17, something always emphatically denied by the palace, and the allegation was rejected by the US courts. The relationship of the sex offender and the prince has drawn worldwide attention. After the release of these new pictures, Buckingham Palace said His Royal Highness deplores the exploitation of any human being, and the suggestion he would condone, participate in, or encourage any such behaviour is abhorrent. One thing is incontrovertible. Prince Andrew continued his acquaintance with a known sex offender long after it became public, something that's still been left unexplained by both the palace and Prince Andrew. Despite Epstein's death, the investigation and its ramifications are far from over, and this will worry the royal family.
Well, joining us now from Norwich is former BBC royal correspondent Michael Cole. Good evening, Michael Cole. First of all,
good evening.
What do you make of the speed of the palace's response?
Outraged denial will not work. Answers are needed. The truth is required, you've put some of the cogent questions that need to be addressed. This is a very serious matter. It's going to become more serious. It's going to become worse for the Prince and worse for Buckingham Palace, because there are likely to be at least one and maybe more civil cases in America. That puts the Prince into the American legal system. This is not something that can be given to Scotland Yard to be buried. It is not something that will come up before Her Majesty's justices in the Royal Courts of Justice to be argued about by Queen's Counsel. This is going to go through the American court system. And in America, as you well know, Kirsty, they say with some justice that however high you may be, the law is above you. And this is already happening. Lawyers in America are asking the Prince to give depositions. That is the beginning of the process. It would be far better for him to address these matters right now.
Yes, so basically US lawyers who are operating on behalf of the alleged victims they're asking him simply to help them to find out more about what Epstein was up to, what kind of person he was. But there's no question of any kind of extradition or anything like that. It would be unthinkable to have something like that. What you're suggesting is it would do Prince Andrew good to go voluntarily if requested.
Yes, that is indeed what the American lawyers are saying and is being reported this evening. The fact of the matter is that he is a prime witness in these matters. Perhaps nobody is better situated to comment on these matters. He was the man inside the house. He was the man in the Mews House in London. He was in the pictures. He was there at the material times.
Well, I want to come on and talk to you.
What the lawyers in America are saying...
Sorry, I want to come on and talk to you about a Daily Mail story tomorrow morning. Before I do that, just very quickly from your vast experience, what about these stories that surfaced the last few days, you know, a very immaculately timed stories, or a flurry about a getting together again of Sarah Ferguson and Prince Andrew? It seemed too good to be true timing-wise.
Well, that's their personal affairs. I think, to be honest, that's froth and is immaterial. I think, though, if he's wise, he should take advice of his daughters. After all, you must remember, at the time these alleged offences took place, the Prince's own daughters were about the same age as some of these alleged victims of Jeffrey Epstein, now deceased. And I think anybody, any decent person, albeit a prince of the royal blood, would hesitate to still maintain a relationship with, a close relationship with somebody who'd already been convicted of fairly vile crimes.
In the Daily Mail tomorrow morning, it says Epstein's flight record raises yet more questions for Andrew. This is further linkage between the two men. Does that, in your view, put further pressure on Prince Andrew?
Well, this is what's going to happen, Kirsty. There's going to be a drip feed. Bit by bit, the information is going to come out. And you know, and your listeners know, and your viewers know, that it's not the offence that gets them in the end, it's the cover-up. And to avoid the cover-up, candour, openness, truthfulness, right now, that might actually save the situation. And if I were giving Prince Andrew, for whom I have some regard, I might say, and I liked him in his younger days, and he served this country well in the Falklands War, and he put himself into real danger, flying a helicopter as a decoy for Exocet missiles, so let's give him credit. If I were advising him now, which I'm not, I would say to him, take some advice from your lawyers, but see as if you can, do your best to answer and address these questions, because nothing else will lay this matter to rest.
Michael Cole, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Prince Andrew's alleged involvement in the Jeffrey Epstein scandal has deepened this morning, with new vision emerging showing the Duke inside the disgraced billionaire's New York home 2 years after Epstein was convicted of child sex crimes. Royal correspondent Camilla Tominey joins us now from London with the details. Camilla, Good morning to you. It was well known Jeffrey Epstein was a sex offender at the time this vision was captured. Just how damaging is the airing of it for Prince Andrew?
Well, it is damaging, and I've actually got some breaking news, Georgie, because the newspaper I work for in London, the Daily Telegraph, we spoke to Buckingham Palace late tonight, and they have issued an updated statement from the Duke of York, and it reads, "The Duke of York has been appalled by the recent reports of Jeffrey Epstein's alleged crimes. His Royal Highness deplores the exploitation of any human being, and the suggestion he would condone, participate in or encourage any such behaviour is abhorrent." Clearly, that's an updated statement that they've given in light of the new footage, which I think is damaging in terms of the Duke of York's judgment. He was criticised at the time because photographs emerged of his visit to Jeffrey Epstein in 2010, and he explained to the press and public afterwards that he had made an error of judgment and that he shouldn't have met with the convicted paedophile because, of course, he had been convicted by that point. It wasn't then known that he had stayed with Jeffrey Epstein, so I think this footage is damaging to the Duke's reputation.
That response from the palace is intriguing, given that the Queen has made a public show of support for her son. She allowed him to sit alongside her as they were driven from a church service just last week. What did you make of that?
Well, I thought it was interesting that there was obviously this family display of support. Prince Andrew was up there with Sarah Ferguson, his ex-wife, in Balmoral. They do still go and visit the Queen in Balmoral, although notably Prince Philip is never there because there's still a bit of frostiness between him and his former daughter-in-law. We think as well that their daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, were with them in Balmoral, and indeed we understand that the daughters are now in Sotogrande in Spain with the couple. Some people find it odd that this couple who are divorced still remain very close. Sarah Ferguson still lives with the Duke in Windsor in his property Royal Lodge, and they do holiday together to get away from it. He was conspicuous by his absence, of course, this morning, not being in Scotland with his mother and other members of the family, but out in Spain, with the reports suggesting that the couple are trying to have a holiday with their daughters, and in fact the Duke was contemplating playing a round of golf in a very famous course there. So I think the reaction from Buckingham Palace is obviously to give an updated response in light of this weekend's reports. But of course, it must be stressed that they still strenuously deny on his behalf any of the allegations that have been made in any of these court documents and insist that all of these allegations are completely untrue. It is also worth noting that some of these claims have been thrown out of court in the US, and indeed he isn't party to any legal action whatsoever.
These allegations and rumours have been hanging over Prince Andrew's head for many years now. What is your sense about whether this will proceed or whether it'll all blow over for the Prince? How do you see it playing out, Camilla?
Well, I think reputationally it has been damaging, and not just for him, but actually his ex-wife. Sarah Ferguson had to admit that Jeffrey Epstein had lent her some money and then had to give it back to him and apologise and say that that in turn for her lacked judgment. There's been some questionable headlines around her accepting money from a Hong Kong businessman with regard to carrying out some marketing and other services. There was an invoice with a royal cipher on it for £200,000. So generally, you know, none of this looks particularly good, but of course to infer anything further from that in terms of guilt would be completely wrong. Buckingham Palace maintains the Duke of York's innocence in any of these allegations, but the whole look of his association with a man who lived in a house of horrors, which the Duke of York has now been spotted in footage having attended, and then to be waving goodbye to a young brunette outside is not the best optics for any member of the royal family, least of all the Queen's second son.